who seems to have it all. They are charismatic, successful, and admired by everyone they meet. But for some, the closer you get, the more you realize that something is missing, a complete absence of guilt, remorse, or basic human empathy. This was the case with an executive named Edward. When he joined a major tech firm, he used his charm to quickly become the CEO's most trusted advisor. He pinpointed exactly what the leadership wanted to hear, securing his position within his first few days. But while the CEO saw a star employee, Edward's colleagues saw a different side. He began targeting dedicated managers, extracting their best ideas in private, and then presenting them to the board as his own. If anyone tried to speak up, Edward launched quiet campaigns to undermine their credibility, altering records to make his targets look incompetent. People like Edward aren't just characters in a documentary. They are often the person in the next office or the friend of a friend. They represent a specific psychological threat that most people are completely unprepared to encounter. Human society relies on empathy. It is the evolutionary mechanism that allows us to recognize and share the pain of another person. However, a specific percentage of the population lacks this mechanism entirely. They navigate the world without the emotional brakes that keep the rest of us from exploiting one another. Psychologists categorize these traits under the Dark Triad: Narcissism, which is an obsessive need for admiration; Machiavellianism, a tendency toward cold strategic manipulation; and Psychopathy, the total absence of a conscience. When these traits overlap, the result is a person who lacks the basic moral framework that most of us take for granted. The reason these individuals are so difficult to spot is that they don't lack all empathy, only one specific kind. They have a broken system for effective empathy, which is the ability to actually feel someone else's emotions. While they can't feel your pain, they possess high cognitive empathy. As shown, they map your microexpressions and process feelings like an AI scanning for data points. They don't use this to understand you. They use it to identify exactly which buttons to push. This often begins with a phase called idealization or love bombing. Edward used his cognitive empathy to mirror the CEO's goals, making the CEO feel uniquely understood and supported. This initial phase creates a sense of deep trust, which the manipulator uses as a foundation for the exploitation that follows. Once that trust is established, the behavior shifts to devaluation. This is when the charm vanishes and is replaced by criticism or gaslighting. Edward used this shift to keep his colleagues off balance while he systematically stole their work. This isn't just a choice of behavior. It's visible in fMRI scans. In most people, seeing distress causes the amygdala to light up, but here, emotional centers remain dark. They process suffering in logical, cold areas used for math or grocery lists. This neurological deficit leads to the final phase, the discard. When Edward was eventually caught, he didn't apologize or show remorse. He simply walked away to a higher-paying role, viewing the 15 people whose careers he ruined as nothing more than stepping stones. Researchers tie these behaviors to the D factor, or the dark factor of personality. It is a consistent tendency to prioritize one's own gains at the direct expense of others. To someone with a high D factor, the world is a jungle where empathy is a weakness and exploitation is simply a sign of intelligence. The most difficult part of dealing with a Dark Triad individual is accepting that you cannot change them. Kindness, patience, and explaining your pain will not work. Because their lack of empathy is tied to neurological structures, it isn't something that can be fixed with love. If you identify these dark traits in someone, the single most effective response is to end all contact immediately. If you have to deal with them in a workplace or a co-parenting situation, you can use a method known as gray rocking. This involves becoming as emotionally unresponsive and uninteresting as a literal rock. This approach works because it denies them the data their cognitive empathy needs. When they realize they can no longer get an emotional reaction or a specific utility from you, they will look for a different target. Empathy is the emotional core of what makes us human. But in a world where some people view that quality as a tool for manipulation, knowing how to protect yourself is a survival skill.